The great thing about having a donor advised fund is you put the money aside, that's all it's for. It's for charity. And so the only decision you have to make is who do you want to give it to? What speaks to you and was inspired? And I'm not pretending that's an easy problem, but that's the rewarding part, right? Finding something you connect with, being able to give, feeling that empowerment. There's always the heart and the mind. Some people come to donor advised funds from the mind. It's incredibly tax efficient. There's no question. Like, there's so many ways that using a donor advised fund, whether you're running a business or for it's your own life or legacy planning, there are a lot of people who come into the donor advised fund for very rational money related reasons. But the heart matters too.
Welcome to Catching Up to Fi, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to Fi together.
Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to Fi. I'm Bill Yount with my co-host Jackie Cummins-Koski, and today we are disrupting giving. Jackie, giving is such an important part of our financial lives, and we have a great fintech person with us today who is democratizing giving. Tell us about what we're going to talk about today.
Heck yeah, because giving to your favorite charity just got easier. Have you ever heard of a donor advised fund? I personally did not for a very long time. Now it's not just for rich people. So today we're talking about something that makes the donor advised fund accessible to everyone. And we're also going to talk a little bit about ways to help your donation go just a little bit further. So I'm excited about this conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat this again at the end, but we believe that giving is a critical part of living. Daffy is a great giving tool providing access to tax-efficient giving, and we love optimization and tax efficiency here to everyone. Adam Nash, welcome to Catching Up to Fi.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm loving this energy.
Yeah, I'm going to have to tell you, our audience, a little bit about you, and we'll hear more about it during the show. But guess what? Adam is the co-founder and CEO of a donor-advised fund called Daffy.org. That's not Daffy Duck. That's Donor Advised Fund for You. He has served as an executive, angel investor, and advisor to some of the most successful technology companies to come out of Silicon Valley. Adam previously served as the president and CEO of Wealthfront. He has held executive and technical roles at Dropbox, LinkedIn, eBay, and Apple. Adam also serves as an adjunct lecturer at Stanford University, where he teaches personal finance for engineers. I am told it is cold in California today, Adam. How are you doing? You're wearing a winter shirt.
I guess everything's all relative. It's warm enough that I'm wearing a t-shirt, but I am wearing the winter Daffy shirt until spring breaks out. Soon enough. Planting soon enough.
Man, I'm in cold Ohio, and we're happy to get out of the teens. I'm not sympathizing with you, Adam, but we are loving having you today. And this is going to be a warm conversation talking all about giving and charity and how we can make donations go a little bit further.
Adam, let's pull the lens back a little bit. And you mentioned before the show that giving is so important to someone's financial life, and we teach it to our kids. But what happens after that?
There's a little bit of a journey for every founder. Like, why do a company? Why do a new product and service? And the journey behind Daffy is actually pretty simple. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and people really focused on community, each other. Obviously, there were a lot of people who needed support. And I was really reflecting on the fact that, well, quite simply, all these great companies, all these great products in the last 15 years to help people spend better, save better, invest better. I'd been on the board of Acorns. I'd been an investor in a number of these companies, was a CEO of Wealthfront. But where was the same innovation around giving? Giving is huge. There's 50 to 60 million American households who give to charity every year. Like, where are the products for them? And I'd always kept this list of kind of great financial products that most people didn't know about, hadn't been reinvented yet. And the donor advised fund was there. I mean, most people didn't know that there's this wonderful tax efficient account for giving, literally for charitable giving. And so thinking about how to reinvent that and produce an app where it wasn't just for wealthy people, but everyone who gives could easily put money aside for charity when it's convenient for them. have it invested, and then have that money available anytime they're inspired to give. I mean, that's really where Daffy started. But I always believe that the best products, not just financial products, but the best products in general, come from deep-seated, real emotional needs and resonance that we have. I mean, and as you mentioned, giving is one of those things. A lot of people don't think about giving as a financial goal, but it's because it's more than that, right? Like, we teach our children to give. So many cultures have giving built into the backbone of what makes a great, not just society, but kind of an individual life, a fulfilled life. And so I love working and trying to figure out how technology can just make that better, how it can help amplify those instincts. And that's really where Daffy came from. That's why we named it Daffy, right? It's the Donor Advised Fund for you.
Donor Advised Fund is a pretty intimidating name. And I didn't know that the history of the Donor Advised Fund went back to the 1930s. It's really evolved. Take us through the evolution of this, and you are on the cutting edge of this now, but what did it look like before, and why has it been so hidden in the financial landscape?
Well, you're right. It actually has a long history. Most people are surprised to hear that. And as you mentioned, it goes back almost 100 years to the 1930s. And I think it's for a simple reason. The basic idea of putting money aside for charity that's not just used once, but it's used on an ongoing basis. There's a reason why schools have endowments and why foundations exist. So that idea goes back a long way. For most people, they hadn't even really thought about a donor advised fund until some of the big banks and brokerages started rolling them out in the 80s and in the 90s. And so you saw more and more people, the adoption curve really started there. But part of the problem, I think, was the business model. A lot of those institutions were built around investments. And so how do people charge for investment products? They charge a percentage of assets. And the minute you make that your business model, inevitably you start looking for the biggest accounts. So I think for a lot of these platforms, the Donor Advised Fund was a useful product for financial advisors and wealth managers to help their clients get access to this great account. And that's fantastic. But as most people don't have a financial advisor or a wealth manager, and so they never heard of the Donor Advised Fund. And there's a lot of work going on to make it more obvious to more people, but you have to have the right product, the right business. Daffy, it was important to us to avoid some of that. And so it's one of the reasons that we don't charge a percentage of assets. A lot of great nonprofits out there, we have a membership-based model, right? It's free to get started, and then we charge a flat membership fee every month based on what services you use.
I think that's the part where you're really democratizing the way that donor advised funds exist today. And some people, when they're mentioning donor advised funds, they don't even mention the fees, but that matters because that means that's less money going to the charity.
That's right. And I can't believe, actually, the financial industry is not known for being so transparent about fees. So I guess this is not a unique problem, but I can't tell you how many people I've known who have had donor advised funds for years, even decades, and didn't realize that they were paying anything in fees, let alone how high it is. I mean, I love a lot of these institutions. I mean, I love Vanguard. I think it's a fantastic place, but Vanguard has a $25,000 minimum on their donor advised fund and charges 0.6% for the first $500,000 that you put in that account. 60 basis points. It's hard to even think about another Vanguard product that has a fee that high. It's usually 1/10 the size. And by the way, who has $500,000 to put aside for charity? I mean, some people do, and kudos to them, because obviously I'd like to see more money put aside for charity. But for most of us, we just want a simple product that lets us put money aside when it's useful for us, know that it's being invested well and properly, and that any time that we want to give to an institution that inspires us, that it's just a heartbeat away, just a few taps to do it. And so that's what we tried to do at Daffy, but we really are standing on the shoulders of giants. The Donor Advised Fund is a wonderful financial product, and I'm probably with you that more people who give regularly should just know about it. And regardless of what institution they use, they should start that process of putting money aside for charity as one of the things that they just do financially.
It's interesting because often we think about, and maybe in our late starter community too, giving last. And I like to, as Charlie Munger always says, always invert. Giving first, I think, is a very healthy way to pursue a happy life. Because in the end, we all want to have a happy life. And we always argue, can money buy you happiness? In buying giving, you definitely buy happiness, I think. So if you bring giving to the front of your mind, I think you really enhance your ability to lead a robust arc of a financial life. And Daffy allows you to do that right at the get-go, at the beginning of your financial life, when, say, you have no money, but you want to give and you want to give efficiently. Open your 401k, open your Roth, open your HSA, but why not open a Daffy account right then too? And that should be right on the front line of the accounts we establish our kids with. And to circle back to your comments about the big institutions, I love them too. I was in Vanguard. I am in Fidelity. My donor advised fund was actually split and held at both. And the $25,000 hurdle in Vanguard was significant, and we can talk about appreciated shares there as a method. And then Fidelity had a hurdle of, I think, $5,000, but that's gone away, probably because of Daffy. And the fees are an issue. And a membership fee, if you have a calculator on your website, which is really cool, and you can compare for the amounts you have there, how much am I paying? And for any amount, basically, you're paying less to have that money there and managed at Daffy than anywhere else.
Yeah, we built Daffy around this idea to make it as easy as possible, whenever it's convenient for you, to put money aside for charity and know that that's a smart thing to do financially, tax-wise, etc. But we really wanted to build a platform that emphasized giving as something that you do every year on an ongoing basis, right? Like, we want people using Daffy to be using it for years and decades, right? And the model's kind of oriented around that journey. And you give what you can, but for most people, what they discover about giving is it really is rewarding in a different way. I mean, I think this is why so many cultures and traditions have it built in. There's a lot of life that makes it easy to focus on ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of problems. Life is not easy. Like, there's a lot to do. But I think most cultures build in this idea that the difference between all of it being for you versus some portion of it being for others, the minute you start giving, it kind of takes you out of that sphere and gets you to think about what impact you're having on other people, on causes, whatever really speaks to you and your family and your values. There is a real value in giving. And putting money aside and making giving one of the goals you have. I mean, I can't tell you how many people they give, but there's no line item on their budget for it. They're not thinking about it financially. And what happens is, at some point, someone asks them to give to something that they actually care about. And then it becomes a hard problem in their head, right? Wait, do I have the money this month to do it? Is that money for something else? It's very hard to make that decision on the fly. The great thing about having a donor advised fund is you put the money aside. That's all it's for. It's for charity. And so the only decision you have to make is, who do you want to give it to? What speaks to you and was inspired? And I'm not pretending that's an easy problem, but that's the rewarding part, right? Finding something you connect with, being able to give, feeling that empowerment that you actually put those resources aside, and then giving it to an organization or a cause that you care about. We see it in the data. Once people start giving and you make it easy enough, they give more and more over time, right, as they progress in life. And probably a little bit of that is wisdom, but I think part of it is just the reward that comes from it. It's something that you can do that matches for your, I don't want to say success, but something that you've done, and then you positively impact others. And so getting people on that fly, that's what we built Daffy around, is to just make people, I mean, it's in our mission statement. We want to help people be more generous more often.
Yeah. So Adam, you talked about empowering givers, people that want to support the things that are important to them, these nonprofits. I wanted to mention a couple of things that even before you get to a donor advised fund, and we'll talk about some specific strategies there, things that Bill has used as well. But I wanted to talk about, for this, I'm a smaller dollar giver. My income was a little bit smaller. My wealth is not quite as much. I'm more like the 1,000 to 5,000. You wrote a great article about the One Big Beautiful Bill and how the donations has changed. But I wanted to remind people, and really remind myself, that starting in 2026, even if you don't itemize, you can deduct up to $1,000. That goes direct to charity. And if you're married, it's $2,000. So don't forget about that. 90% of people do not itemize. And then if you have an employer, oftentimes they will match your donations, and they may require that it goes directly to the charity. But the article that you wrote really broke down the new law and how it works. So we'll hit the strategy later, but can you summarize what the change was last year and what that's going to mean for people and their charitable giving?
Yeah, and I'm happy to. And the truth is that big tax bill had quite a few things that impacted giving, and some of them you just mentioned. The one that I wrote about is one for people who itemize their deductions, which is just the reality is they did something that really has never been there before, which is they basically said that there's a certain amount of your charitable giving that you can't deduct. And it's those first dollars that come out. And they didn't make it a dollar amount. They made it a percentage. And that always makes it a little complicated for people. So what I wrote about was they put in what sounds like a small thing, like, oh, well, you can't deduct the first 0.5% of your income that you give to charity. 0.5% sounds so small. But I think you and I both know that actually when it comes to financial products and services, 0.5% can actually be a very big number. And so what I broke down for people is that if you give like the average person, 0.5% is actually bigger than it sounds. And a donor advised fund can actually help you avoid that drag so that you actually have more money to give to the charities you care about, not just once, but over years, decades.
This is where it gets fun because you've gamified giving, and everybody loves an app. And I think Daffy was one of the first people to come out with a phone app that allows you to engage with giving on the fly. And I'm going to tell you a story. I was at a charitable event recently, met somebody really new, really dynamic, the CEO of a small nonprofit in my hometown, helping Hispanics integrate into the community around us. And I was very enthused about this right away. And I immediately felt compelled to give. And you said, as you said before, it's what do I do now? It's hard. I pulled out my phone, opened up Daffy, and immediately, right in front of her, within 30 seconds, gave the foundation some money. I said, and what I do with this, which is really cool, is that's how I accumulate charities throughout the year. Sort of, okay, let's do small gifts here and there. And we're going to talk about how you integrate your family into this mission and how you integrate your larger community in a social mission. So your gift can be multiplied throughout your community and your social area. And we're going to have to talk about ways you do that, because one small gift can turn into a Giving Tuesday larger gift when your family votes. Because now my family's excited about this stuff. Tell me, how do you make giving not a isolated event, but a social experience?
No, I love that. And there are so many people who, for them, Daffy represents this easy ability to just have all their giving in one place. And it sounds simple, but do people even remember what they gave 2, 3, 4 years ago? I mean, it's great to have your tax receipts in one place. A lot of people like that. But just turning those one-time inspirations into what actually benefits a lot of organizations, recurring giving. Right. So when you're thinking every year who to give to, you actually have the list, not only of who you gave to in the past, but how much you gave. It reminds you, it inspires you, and it makes it easier to give again. And we do try to gamify that. I mean, if Robinhood can make it delightful to buy stocks, we can make it delightful to give. And we give confetti and we let people set goals and track it through the year like Apple Health. But I have to tell you on that one feature, you shouldn't be thanking me. You should really be thanking my wife. It's a funny story from the early days, but when my co-founder and I were really starting to think about starting Daffy in 2020, my wife, this is a story that's known at the company, but my wife gave me that look. There's a little bit of look like, listen, Adam, if you're going to do another company, and of course the look said, I know you're going to do another company. So she was absorbed. She says, like, I just have one feature request. She said, when I go to the back to school night and they're talking about the organization they've set up to support after school sports and art and all the other great programs, et cetera, and they're encouraging parents to donate, I just want to be able to open my purse, take my phone out, and with a few taps, give them money, not hear about that it didn't come from the right account, not worry about having a receipt, and not needing to get 12 more emails about needing to donate and putting on my action list. I just want to get it done. I actually thought of it in my head as the Carolyn feature. And we spent a lot of time trying to get that exact scenario right before we ever launched in 2021. So actually, it's very rewarding to hear that that worked for you, because that was exactly the idea, that you get inspired. And it's as easy as pulling your phone out of your pocket and a few taps to give. That's how easy we wanted to make it. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but when we launched in 2021, there were no other fully functional donor advised fund applications in the App Store. We were the first one. And I think it speaks to our focus, but it really does warm my heart to hear that that worked for you. And I love the idea that once you do that, you're kind of collecting almost bookmarks so that you can remember in the future who to give to and turn that into an ongoing relationship. It's fantastic.
You talk about generational giving. And so every year is a giving year. And we collect all the little ones throughout the year. My kids they'll submit them to me, and we'll make donations of $50 or $100 or whatever we can. And your minimum donation, by the way, is $18, and other organizations require you to give much more for a donation. So it really can be smaller dollar things. So you don't have to worry that you have to give away a lot or have a lot. You can do this very easily through Daffy. But then we sit down at Christmas in the fourth quarter of the year, and we go, okay, we've donated to all these charities this year. What 3 or 4 do we want to donate to for Giving Tuesday in a larger way and make a bigger impact? And so engaging the family in it, but not only that, you engage your community. I have another story for you. I created a campaign for an impact charity, small charity, low overhead, great pass through to the homeless men that it served. A friend of mine's on the board and runs it, but I didn't want my gift to be the only one they got. So in Daffy, I was able to create a campaign to put together my own thoughts on it, a YouTube on the charity, a blog about it, create a whole organized campaign that I put out to the Daffy community, and I can put out to my Facebook community. And all of a sudden, everything's multiplied. An old friend of mine I hadn't heard from in years donated to the campaign and said, Bill, it's nice to hear from you. It looks like a really good charity. Thanks for putting this out there. And nobody does that in this landscape but Daffy, right?
Yeah, no, I love that story as well, because it turns out most of our best ideas at Daffy come from our members. You aggregate these people who care about giving and you listen. And one of them was looking for more ways to give. I've put this money aside in this donor advised fund, but I want to give. I want to use it. And one of our members came to us and said, in nonprofits, the most common thing that donors do to amplify their giving, to multiply it, is they do matching campaigns. And I've been on the board of a number of nonprofits, and this once again sounded like something, yeah, that's right. For wealthy donors, they do this. It's not unusual for nonprofits to go to one of their biggest donors and say, hey, instead of making your large donation this year, can we do a match? Because that will inspire others to give. But why does that have to just be for wealthy donors giving tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands? Why can't you say, hey, instead of giving a couple $100s to my kid's school, I'm going to match the next $200 in donation to my kid's school, whatever that's for. And I know it sounds funny, but in software, you can do these things, right? No other donor advised fund has campaigns. That's not a thing that Fidelity or Schwab or Vanguard will do. But it turns out it was very simple to make it so that people can pick the charity. We let them pick up to 15 charities that they want to support. The donations can be spread evenly across them, or you can let the donor pick. You write your own words, your own images about why you care about this cause. And the one thing we made super easy is that you can say how much you're going to match, so that when people come in and give $20, $30, $50, automatically the match comes out of your donor advised fund. It sounds so simple, and when you use it, it really is very easy. And we get great feedback about how rewarding it is. But that is actually one of the innovations that we're really proud of on the platform. There are so many great ideas that people have to help inspire generosity. And my team is just busy trying to take all those ideas and as fast as possible build them into the product to help people be more generous.
Yeah, and Adam, I definitely had Robinhood in my head when I was thinking about what you were doing with Daffy. I didn't know if you wanted me to compare you to that, but just so our audience members, if you haven't heard of Robinhood, in my mind, they did democratize investing, because before they came along, all the big ones were charging $50, then $9.99 to make a trade. Robinhood comes along and says, wait a minute, we don't have to charge you for a trade. So guess what? Within a year, you had all the big brokers weren't charging transaction fees or trading fees all of a sudden. So that's amazing. Like you said, they gamified it. You got the confetti and all that. And the way you're doing it with Daffy is very similar and in a really good way. So no matter what you think about Robinhood, they did democratize investing to make it available to average everyday people, even if they have small dollars. And you were on the board of Acorns for a while. pretty much the same thing for Acorns. My daughter, she loves Acorns. She started using it when she was in her like 21, 22. She still uses it today. And so she stuck with it. And now she's got the investing mindset. And you mainly are investing in index funds. So that's just a couple of examples of like how now in this space, this donation and charitable giving space, you've done the same thing to where everybody can have a donor advised funds, use it the way that they want to use it. And now it's easy for everybody.
Yeah, well, like a lot of folks who study and been engineers, I love video games. I love them growing up, et cetera. And so I think it was actually back in the social media era when I was at LinkedIn, we started talking very heavily about how do you use game mechanics to help people do the right thing, right? So for LinkedIn, it was like building your professional reputation. How do we help people kind of get down the path of being successful in a career standpoint? And then, of course, with financial applications, you can use those same techniques to encourage good behaviors, encourage people to save more, to encourage people to do all the small things that make their financial life. And of course, you can give confetti, you can set goals, all these different things we do now for our health and not just our finances. At Daffy, we try to use all those same things to help encourage people to give. You know, it struck me, I talked to dozens of people across the country about how they give. Before we ever wrote a line of code, it was one of the first things I did was just put out a survey and literally ask people if I could do a short Zoom with them to hear about their traditions around giving. And one of the things that struck me was that a lot of people in our lives remember someone who taught us about giving. Sometimes it's a parent, an aunt or an uncle, a grandparent, it could be a teacher, it could be a priest, a rabbi. There was someone who taught them that giving was important. And it was interesting how they reflected a little bit that they wanted that person to be proud of them. And so we try to make Daffy a community and an app where when you give, we get you on the right path, that right behavior. We reward the first donation, right? The confetti, the congratulations. We reward recurring behavior, right? We have that goal for the year. And by the way, when you hit that goal, it turns gold and the confetti comes. Actually, I made the engineers kind of hated it. I kind of made it so like it wasn't a one-time thing. You can always get that confetti again if you just hit the app again, etc. And then, of course, you know, seeing others give, right? That reflection, right? Like on Daffy, of course, your giving can be private and anonymous. But for a lot of people, they like to inspire others. It turns out one of the big reasons you give is that you're inspired by another person. And so people realize that, hey, if I give to something and I let other people know, maybe they'll be more inspired to give, friends, colleagues, etc. And so we really built that into the app design on purpose, right? We're trying to make it rewarding for people to be more generous, just like other apps make it rewarding when you save more and hit your goal.
I am so excited to announce our new partnership at Catching Up to Fi with Monarch. Monarch is a comprehensive financial tool to monitor your financial health and life. I have been using Monarch for 3 years to track my spending, net worth, budget, savings goals, and more. I am not a spreadsheet nerd, and without Monarch's robust, intuitive tools and user interface, this process would have seemed impossible. I was recently also able to seamlessly share my data with our new flat fee financial planner for a retirement readiness checkup when I turned 60. He uses Monarch with all of his clients. After our analysis, I was shocked to find out that we were financially independent 3 years before I thought we would be. You can't manage what you don't measure. Using Monarch was critical in this review and planning process and remains important in monitoring my ongoing financial health. Thanks to Monarch, all of our podcast listeners and community members have access to a 50% discount off their first year subscription. Simply follow the link below and use the discount code CatchingUp50 at checkout. I am proud to say that my sons are the first to use the code to join the Monarch family. I encourage you to share this link and code with family and friends who need or want to take back their money and grow their wealth. Daffy does so much more too, because in some ways it's got this kind of minimalistic art of life philosophy where, okay, rather than give consumables and consumption, say at a birthday, at a graduation, at a Christmas, you're able to give gift cards. You're able to give people the permission to give away the money you've set aside to give. And it's a win-win-win. For example, when my nieces and nephews turn 16, I say, okay, I'm going to give you something. I say, well, I'm going to give you the right to give away my money. And here's how you do it. You can come into my app and you tell me this is what you want to do and watch. The money's going to them. So you can give gift cards. You can give permission. It teaches them that giving is a gift. It's a green gift because it's not consumption. It's just like when you can give, we talked to a 529 expert, and you can give a 529 gift card for somebody's gift of college. These ways of giving are so powerful, I think, and people need to know that you also have a work program where you can work with companies to match their gifts in the traditional fashion. You also have an advisor program where an advisor can say, you know what, I'm going to pay for your membership to Daffy, and then you're going to get the tax advantages of giving. Let's do this together, because they may never have heard about it. Now, tell us a little bit, if you like, about those programs.
Oh, I'm happy to. You're just reminding me that it's been a very busy 4 years doing all these features. But you're right. They all make sense. Daffy Gifts, really, I have to give the credit to my co-founder. It's such a normal thing, right? Like, we receive these gifts sometimes where I made a donation in your honor to this organization. But my co-founder was like, why do they get to pick the organization? I should get to pick which organization inspires me to give to. And so that's where Daffy gift cards are. On a simple link, once again, you have the money put aside for charity. If you want to give someone $20, $50, $100 or more to give to the charity of their choice, they can. And you mentioned our workplace platform. That also came from one of our members. They had a firm in New York, almost 100 employees, and they said, hey, I want to build giving into the culture at my company. I want everyone to have money put aside to give for the communities that they're involved with. And so I'll pay for all my members to have Daffy for free. And so we built Daffy for Work actually based on that. And now some of the largest companies out there, companies like Acorns and OpenAI and others, actually have Daffy for Work as a benefit for all the employees who work there to inspire them to give. And actually, it's really useful because as a manager, if someone does something great, you engineer, squash some of those bugs, you can give them $100 to give to the charity of their choice rather than a Starbucks gift card. It's nice to have that ability, especially in the culture of the company. And then, of course, it turned out, as you said, there are a lot of financial advisors who wanted to get their clients to use donor advised funds for their giving, not just because it makes financial sense, but also it's better for their financial lives in general. And so they said the same thing. How do I just make it so that Daffy is for free for all of my clients? And so we use that same platform to enable advisors to do it. So it's funny how all these things interconnect. From a software standpoint, when you're building things, you build these different features and they can be used in so many different ways. So what we do is we listen to our members and we look at other products and services out there and say, hey, how can we use what we've built to help people be more generous? And so whether that's because we're helping financial advisors with their clients, whether we're helping companies with their employees, or just helping anyone who wants to spread that generosity around and send out a Daffy gift. We love building these features into our platform because they're all different ways for people to get inspired and give more. Really, everything comes back to that.
So Adam, I have a question. So the Daffy at Work, does that work similar to getting an employer match on your charitable contributions that some companies offer? Is that basically what that is?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. So the original Daffy for Work was just the simple feature of letting the employer pay for it, like a perk, right? So don't worry about the membership fee. We'll cover membership, almost like a gym membership, right? Some employers will do that. They get a discount on a gym for their employees or something local. It was the same thing for giving. But obviously, a lot of employers started looking at it and said, oh, this is like a 401k for charity. And you and I both know that one of the ways you get people that can help save more for retirement is by matching. If that helps people save more for retirement, why can't that help people give more? And so for one of our customers, we had to implement matching. So yeah, so for Daffy for Work, employers don't have to match, kind of like 401ks don't have to match. But it turns out that if you match the first few $100s or a few $1,000s that people put aside for charity every year, it inspires more people to put money aside for charity every year and you get more adoption. And so we do have that built into the platform now. It also works with our campaign feature, right? Employers running campaigns during the holidays and the company has a Daffy account. The employees have Daffy accounts. And so the company can run a campaign for local organizations to match, and then employees can decide whether or not they want to support that campaign and get a match. So it really turns out all these things work in the workplace just as well as they work for you and me in our individual lives. Our last big innovation there last year was we made it self-service. So now you can go to the website. There's nothing to install. There's no big software package, no upfront fee. But if you want to roll out Daffy for work for your employees, whether you have 2 people at your company or you have 200, it's as simple as filling out the form, linking a bank account, and deciding whether you want to do matching or not. And literally, it's available to your employees after you hit submit. It's really incredible.
See, look at that. So many employers could be doing that. And I know my company matched up to $500 a year, but I remember like they excluded donations to donor advised funds. Now you make it so easy through Daffy. So I just love it. Bill has been around a lot longer, so I didn't even know about this feature. This is new to me, but I got all these bells and whistles going off now to say, there's another great idea that could go a long way. Again, serving everyday people.
The giving thinking forward type websites, it's not just inputting your credit card anymore. You got to have choices. You can have Apple Pay and make it easy there, but why give with debt? And there's going to be other things we need to talk about there because there's credit card fees that don't go through to the charity. But when I see a website that has a link to a donor advised fund giving button, I'm like, these guys are thinking ahead. Wouldn't you like to see a Daffy link on everybody give with Daffy? You could see that everywhere. There are so many things you're doing, and you're doing that as well to make it easy. And this kind of stuff we want it to go viral. We want giving to go viral. There's a lot of bad things in life that go viral, but why not have giving go viral this way? You are on the forefront of doing this. Is there anything that you're thinking about, mulling about in the company that you're wanting to roll out in the next couple of years?
Well, I think you mentioned earlier, it turns out there are some things that come with having your first job out of school, being at a company like Apple. And one of them turns out to be a kind of reticence of talking about features that you haven't launched yet. Apple's famously secretive about their future roadmap. But we continue to get our best ideas. So we are constantly rolling out features. We have 2 great sources, actually, of ideas. Sometimes we look at what large donor advised funds do for their wealthiest members, right, and clients. I mean, there are firms out there who specialize in people who put aside hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars for charity. And we always say, hey, why can't we make that available for everyone? We actually did that last year. We rolled out a feature called custom liquidation, where you have a lot of people invest in stock. If they're fortunate enough that the stock goes up over a long period of time, they want to donate some of that to charity. It turns out that's very tax efficient. You never end up paying the capital gains on those shares. And that means more money for charity, as well as lower taxes for the individual. If you're wealthy, you can go to these institutions and say, hey, I want to donate this stock, but don't sell it right away. Sell it down over the next 10 years. This is going to fund my giving for the next 10 years. But that wasn't built into any donor advised fund that you or I could get access to. And so we made that very easy. So then now when you donate stock to Daffy, we make it easy for you. By default, it's sold immediately and reinvested in a diversified portfolio. But if for some reason you want that stock sold down gradually or held for a period of time, we let you make that recommendation. And so that's an exciting feature for people who hold stocks that they believe in and want to fund their giving for a long period of time. But to be honest, some of the features that make me the most excited are just making the product easier and better. We're spending a lot of time right now. We just rolled out a new donation flow to make it even easier to make donations. We did a lot of work last year to make it even easier to start matching campaigns. And so, believe it or not, a lot of the most impactful changes that we make are just simple things to make the product even easier. You mentioned getting money into the product. Some of our early wins were just making it easier to fund the account however you want.
Let's talk about that, actually, because there's many ways, there's many roads to Rome here.
Yeah.
And Jackie, tell us about what you did, because you just opened an account. And what did you do?
Yeah, so Adam, I'm a new member now, but you got our wheels turning. Bill and I have been talking. So I got Bill's link, which gave him $25 for charity and gave me $25 for charity. So I'm like, okay, that's a good deal. That's enough to get me started. And I just wanted to go ahead and get it started. I'm probably going to continue to not itemize and get my $1,000 deduction or whatever. However, I wanted to have that for anything over that amount. So I said, okay, let me go on putting in my information. Then it came to funding. And I'm like, gosh, do I have to? Because you mentioned donating appreciated stock. So that's just for brokerage accounts, right? It's not for a retirement account. Most of my money is in retirement accounts. So I really didn't have that, but I wanted to get it started. And I'm like, oh, it says that I can use Apple Pay. I can use my credit card. So I use actually my Apple card that's connected to my phone. I just started it with $100. I don't know how I'll contribute in the future, but it got me to open the account and to get it started. And to take it one step further as far as strategy, I'm sure someone probably has already suggested this, but I have a pretty large health savings account. It's almost $300,000 now. More people will start to be getting bigger HSA. If it's a non-spouse and you pass away, it's fully taxable the year in which you pass away. So having a charity on there makes sense. So I had individual charities in addition to some other beneficiaries. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of having the individual charities, I think I want to put my Daffy Donor Advised Fund as my beneficiary. So I'm having this conversation with ChatGPT to see if this is possible. It is. So I put in Daffy, it for the benefit of me. And now that's a pretty significant way that I plan to use my donor advised fund with Daffy. It's one of the beneficiaries on my health savings account, which was different from retirement accounts because as soon as you pass away that year, whoever gets it besides a spouse, it is fully taxable. So that's how I'm using it. And that's been my experience. And literally, Adam, this has been going on for just the last couple of weeks. So this is very new for me, but you got my wheels turning.
Wow, I'm actually impressed because I felt like we started with Donor Advised Fund 101, and then you jumped within 30 seconds to 301. You're at graduate level.
Look, Adam, we are thinkers around here.
And by the way, donor advised funds turn out to be really useful, not just for that use case, but for a lot of things around estate planning, because donor advised funds provide some continuity. Daffy lets you add other family members and folks onto your donor advised fund. You can specify who takes care of things afterward. But there's one thing to write a document about who you want to give to, but setting up a donor advised fund that has recurring donations so people know which charities, which amounts you do every year, there's really a lot of value in that. So I'm impressed. But getting back to the funding and getting started, we do a lot of things actually to help people get started, because our belief is that once people start the process of giving, we see it. They put a little bit of money in the account, and then you know what? There's nothing else you can do with it than give it away. And by the way, our accounts are free if you have a balance less than $100. So we're really actually pushing you to give it away. And then once it's empty, you like it. You like that feeling. And so what we see in our members is they end up putting more money in the account and then giving again. And the amounts go up over time as they understand it better and how they give. Even with the credit card, there's fees on credit cards, and even when they're used through Apple Pay, et cetera. In the beginning, we tried to make it free to use credit cards. It turns out that that doesn't work because some people start pushing very, very large amounts through their credit cards to get points. Right. And it turns out as a small organization, you can't fund that. But we actually kept it so that it's actually free. That first credit card funding up to $1,000 will give you for free that first time. So just to get people down the path of doing it. Obviously, it's a little bit more efficient to fund it from a bank account, and even more efficient if you're fortunate enough to have stocks or investments. We even support crypto. You can do it that way. Yeah. But our whole goal is to get people into the product and using it. But I love the legacy planning, and I'll have to poke a little bit more into the specifics on health savings accounts. That's a really interesting use case.
Well, she is the health savings account wizard, actually a national expert that's unrecognized. And I'm trying to get her to write the book. This is yet another hack in her future HSA book for us. I have a good one for you, too. Another story, though. And what really pulled me to Daffy in the first place was you can customize your portfolio. You have a lot of standard portfolios, conservative, moderate, and aggressive, socially directed portfolios as well for ESG folks. But you have the option of creating your own portfolio. And I am a very big fan of a risk-parity portfolio for a lot of reasons, and we've talked about it on the show. And so the flow for me what was really cool is the inflow for me was I had a Vanguard fund, I had a Fidelity fund. All I had to do was donate the sum from that fund to Daffy. It almost instantaneously went to Daffy. And there I had created a portfolio that I couldn't custom create in either one of those, because I'm a believer in being able to give as much as possible. And as we've talked about on the show before, a risk parity portfolio allows you to give in perpetuum 5% to 6% every year. So I'm like, great, I can do that there. So you can set up automated things that could run for lifetimes to come in a portfolio that will continually grow, and you're virtually guaranteed that it will do, and it will weather the down market seasons and the up market seasons. And so it creates a generational giving wealth machine that just, it snowballs. This is a growing, giving snowball using this portfolio that I can do in Daffy, engaging my family, engaging my community, and watching that giving heart grow. I can customize it to the way I like to invest, which is also cool.
No, and that's fantastic. I love that use case. You basically created your own endowment, right? Stanford and Harvard, et cetera, might have billions of dollars, and they actually use that money every year to support their missions and what they're doing there. But what you did actually is a very powerful thing. You put money aside for charity. You customize the portfolio to reflect your philanthropic goals, which is ongoing giving, right? And custom portfolios lets you do that. And then all of a sudden you have money to give every year. There are a lot of people who fund their Daffy accounts every year and give the money away every year. There's others who have, in the US right now, so many people have variable income, right? You have good years and not so good years. And the advantage of putting money aside in those good years, it's obviously good for taxes because your tax rates are higher in those good years. But it also means that you have money to give in the years that are not so good. And then your use case is actually a third one, which is also very popular, which is, no, I want to put money aside to build a pool of money to give every year in perpetuity. And so custom portfolios we have at some of our higher tiers, the ability, we've actually approved over 600 low-cost ETFs, liquid, all different categories from some of the biggest vendors out there. Vanguard, of course, Fidelity, Schwab, BlackRock, you name it, we probably have it. Because people do want to align their portfolios with their giving goals. And like I said, this was a hard problem 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but it's not that hard. I can tell you, I want to take credit for it, but you talked about platforms like Acorns, Wealthfront, et cetera. These are platforms that have made it so easy in software to manage ETF portfolios, right? So the idea of letting our members recommend a portfolio that matches their goals, and then having that portfolio tax-free, automatically rebalanced, that, I hate to sound like an engineer, but that's a solved problem. It just hasn't been available to all of us. And so we're very happy as a donor advised fund to have that available. It's been very popular. A very large percentage of our assets, charitable assets now, are in these custom portfolios.
Adam, I appreciate you bringing this a little bit more down to earth so that the everyday person can understand this. I'm serious. It's like I never thought that a donor advised fund was even something for me, between the fees and what I perceived as being very high minimums and things like that. So I guess I wanted to be clear on the difference in Daffy's fee model versus the existing legacy donor advised funds, because I feel like the existing ones, it's been an assets under management. And a lot of people, most people these days don't like being charged a % of their assets. And that is pretty much what these other ones are doing. So tell me the differences in Daffy and how it's been doing, and what's the difference in the value to a user that wants to use your platform.
Yeah, happy to. And we tried to keep it as simple as possible. And it turns out it's actually one of the most popular pages on the site is people going through the pricing. Frankly, because I think they can't believe it. I think they're always looking for a catch, but it really is a simple membership model. So for Daffy, we charge a monthly fee. Under $100, it's actually free, right? And then the different tiers are based on the features that you use, or the amounts that you put aside for charity every year, right? So if you're wealthy and you put aside more than $100,000 a year, you get access to all the features, but that's our most expensive tier at $40 a month. Most of our members pay either $3 a month as a contributor, right? That covers putting aside up to $25,000 a year, or use the family plan, right? You want to add your spouse, you want to add your kids. I have 4 children that are all teenagers and above. My wife and I have all 4 of our children on our Daffy account, so they can see donations when they're made, and they can also recommend their own. And then so we have these different tiers, but it's really simple. Almost every other donor advised fund out there, certainly the large national donor advised funds, charge a percentage of assets. And I mentioned Vanguard at 0.6%, 60 basis points, as they say. They're actually relatively low. Some of the donor advised funds charge 0.75%, 1%, even higher. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but it really adds up over time. And that is less money for charity. And a lot of people look at our pricing and they try and do this math, but fundamentally, as your charitable assets grow, and for a lot of people as they get older, they do, because they start spending more time on giving, they care more about legacy, they're more comfortable with that process, those fees just keep going up, right? Like the fee on an account that's twice as big, if the fee is the same, will be twice as much. And so for us, we like the idea that it's not based on that we really encourage people to put money aside for charity. And we also encourage people to donate it as much and as frequently as possible. And so that's what Daffy is really based on. But yeah, you can do the math, and we provide that calculator. I think most people are shocked to find out what that fee is every year on accounts, whether they're thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. Certainly if you get to larger accounts, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Wow, 0.6% on $100,000 is $600 a year. That is not nothing. I mean, and at $200,000, it's twice as much. It's more than $1,000 in fees every year. And so I think once people see that, they go, wow, like that's not what I thought I was getting. And that's also not what I want that money for. I want that money to go to charity. And so anyway, we try to make it as transparent as possible and as simple as possible. And that's why we have the fees documented the way they are. And we try to make it clear in the app too, that membership fee. But I wish the industry was a little bit better about it. I mean, this is a classic founder thing. But for us, it was a major motivation was how do we set up a business model for Daffy that's sustainable? How many software companies out there or financial services, fintechs, are based on a monthly fee? A lot of them. Right. This isn't some new innovation that's never been done before. It just hasn't been done in the donor advised fund space.
Yeah, I found it to be very easy. And I did go to that pricing page, so I'm in those numbers. And there was even some, as I was doing some research, because we do our research around here, there's plenty of donor advised funds that they're not even transparent enough where they share their fees on their website. It's like, why is that? That's a turnoff for me. It's, hey, if you charge assets under management, at least show it on your website, like Fidelity and Vanguard, they do. So it's pretty easy to see. So at minimum, do that. I just want people to know what they're paying, not just as a percentage, but as a dollar amount. And if you're okay with that, you're okay with that. But make sure you are well versed on how much you're paying and the fact that, hey, that amount is not going to go to your charity.
What's great here is people always think, oh, family foundation. There's so many barriers to that, all the legal, financial, board barriers. With Daffy, you're creating your own family foundation. You name it like a foundation, but you don't have all that overhead. And fees do layer. You use low-cost index funds in your fee structure for the funds that you can pick from to invest in. And then you have the lowest fees in the industry for appropriate management fees for what you're doing, helping people manage their quote-unquote own foundation. This gives us access to what the Gates do, but at our level. This is really cool because, like we said, this is democratizes giving. And we have all these great, huge givers that we look at that are role models for us. We have access to the tools they have for much less money than they're paying.
Oh, for sure. That's one of the magic things about technology. But you're right. I mean, actually, it's a very common question now at the higher end is kind of the pros and cons of a foundation versus a donor advised fund. And I think most people are surprised to find out that actually a lot of foundations are starting to use donor advised funds because they're so much more efficient. They don't do everything that foundations do, but if what your concern is the ability to identify organizations that you care about and causes, and then have money sent to them on a regular basis, it turns out donor advised funds do that fantastically well. And you're right. The great thing about a donor advised fund is a foundation really doesn't make sense. The legal fees, the compliance, the accounting, the donor advised fund lets you outsource all of that, right? And so as a result, foundations really only make sense these days, I would argue, at tens of millions of dollars or more. But a donor advised fund is something that everyone can do, right? Even if you're thinking about legacy planning of what you want around after, or if you're doing it right now in the moment to teach your children and grandchildren about the causes you care about and the organizations that matter. I mean, giving has a way of also imparting values and life lessons, etc. And we see people doing this. What's amazing to me is seeing how many young people are doing this, right? You expect giving to be one of those things that you see people gain appreciation as they get older. And there is a natural curve to it. You really do see it in the numbers. But it turns out if you make it accessible and low cost and with modern technology, There's a lot of people who care about giving at an early age, right? They want to have impact. They want to support organizations. They want to build that into the life they're building. Maybe they're starting a family, right? And they want to build giving into the way that they teach their children from a young age. You do that with the organizations you belong to, where you spend your time. But it turns out where you spend your money also says something to the people around you. And so we just try to make it easy across the board to get all those benefits.
Wouldn't it be interesting, because we talk about automatic enrollment to 401ks and automatic escalation. I don't think automatic enrollment to a Daffy as a benefit for an employee or W-2 employee, but you could opt in to this and say, take a percentage of my paycheck, 0.5%, 1%, put it into my donor advised fund to create my giving machine. At the same time, I'm creating my retirement machine. Wouldn't it be nice if that was a human resources offer across the board? We affiliate with Daffy and you can opt in to take a percentage of your paycheck and put it into your own family foundation. I just think, that's the future of what you're doing, is to make it accessible to everybody as a workplace benefit in a way.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. You really have an eye for these features. I should have consulted earlier. It would have been easier. But one of our earliest Daffy for Work employers actually wanted exactly that feature, where they said, no, actually, I want to make it, I'm going to give every employee a certain amount of money every quarter to give. And all they have to do is open the account. But it's not matching. They don't have to put up, like, literally, I want them to give. I want to get them on that process. I want to build it into our culture and send a signal of how important it is to the company that people give. And so actually we have that feature too in Daffy for Work. So by the way, we use it for our organization. Like, every employee is given a certain amount every month in their account that they can give to charity. And that's the great thing about the donor advised fund, is that's all the money can be used for. Right. And so it really does send this strong message that's important. But I love it. You're on all the features.
That's an awesome benefit, because it's teaching such great habits right at the beginning of somebody's financial life. People at the end of the arc of their financial life, I wanted to bring in two here, QCDs, or qualified charitable distributions. People look at, okay, I'm going to give appreciated shares and take the tax optimization in my later years to reduce my required minimum distributions. I want to know, can you take a QCD and donate it to Daffy, or is that not allowed?
There's some specific rules about QCDs and what you can do with donor advised funds. And so the details actually do matter there. In some cases, you can do things. In some cases, you can't. It's a little complicated. I will say that in general, as people get closer to retirement, and certainly as they reach financial independence in general, these questions come up more and more, because you have these investments, you have these vehicles. I mean, you were talking about HSAs earlier, right? We have these different accounts. We have this money accumulated. I mean, for example, I'm a huge fan of index funds, low cost index funds, diversified, keep taxes and expenses as low as possible. And so people think of things like donating stock as something that, I'm not that type of investor. I don't buy the new hot thing, right? I'm a slow and steady build up wealth over time type. But it turns out that as the years go by and decades, those sleepy index funds also accumulate a lot of capital gains. And you don't owe that right away, but if you ever sell them, like, you'll owe that. And so it turns out that even if you hold, Vanguard Total Market, if you've held that for 10, 20, 30 years, there's actually a heavy tax liability built in to all those gains. And it turns out if you donate some of those shares to charity, you'll never pay those capital gains, right? You get the full charitable deduction for the market value of the securities, which means you have more money to give to charity. It's just most people don't know that that's possible. And the donor advised fund makes it so easy, because the fact is most charities aren't set up to do these things. They're not set up to take special distributions. They're not set up to take stock. They're not set up to take mutual funds or crypto or any of these other things. And so the donor advised fund turns out to be an easy way to do these things without the charity having to worry about. Let the donor advised fund worry about getting the cash to the charity. Let the charity worry about their mission and what they're trying to do. And so that's one of the things that we try to do for folks, is make it as easy as possible to get money in from all these different types of accounts and different sources, so that they can focus on their problem, which is, who do I give the money to? And then charities can focus on what they want to focus on, which frankly is their cause, the whole reason the organization exists.
Well, so Adam, so adjacent to that, because I know that's one of the biggest values of a donor advised fund, some people might think they need to itemize every year to get the most value out of this donor advised fund. But one of the most valuable things is the fact that you don't necessarily have to itemize it every year. If you have a year where maybe you got a windfall, or maybe you have a certain appreciated stock in a brokerage account that you put in there, so you can lump sum it one year, get your big deduction, and you can go years and not itemize and not have to worry about it. But being able to front load inside of the donor advised fund, you can realize that deduction in a single year, right?
That's right. So there's two big reasons that people got into this, what's now called bunching, this strategy. And that's one of the big ones, which is the fact that after they changed the tax law in 2017, and it was good, they raised the standard deduction, et cetera, in those ways. And that was actually very good for a lot of people. But what it also meant was certain types of tax deduction weren't available anymore. But if you looked, for a lot of people, they're close to the limit where they could itemize, but they're not there yet. Right. And so what you're talking about, bunching, is one of those ways. If you have a good year, you got a big bonus, maybe an investment turned out well, who knows? Like, people, there are a lot of reasons you got more work that year, you had more, that nudges you into a higher tax bracket in many cases. And so what you can do is you can basically front load multiple years of donations by using a donor advised fund. Right. So if you normally give a couple $1,000s a year to charity, instead, if you have the wherewithal, you could actually put 3 years, 4 years, 5 years worth of giving at once, cross that bar so you can itemize. That money's in your donor advised fund. It's invested tax-free. And now every time you want to give for the next 5 years, that money's available, right, to give anytime you want. You got the big deduction in the year you made the contribution. The money's available to give, and because it's invested tax-free, who knows, you might get the sixth year for free. A lot of our members actually talk about that, their delight of, because they bunch, because they put that money aside in the big year. They were doing the math of like how many years of giving this would fund. But what they tend to not take into account is that when money's invested tax-free, it does grow and compound, and they end up with more money to give. And that's really delightful for folks who really love seeing the impact of those dollars that they put aside for charity.
Yeah, I have a story there too, actually, because we were fortunate as higher income professionals with increased basis or low basis shares in a brokerage fund. We front loaded, say, to Vanguard. And then when I consolidated Vanguard and Fidelity, basically, I've seen over the last few years a lump sum of around $30,000. We've been giving thousands of dollars a year. It's now at $60,000. And so in spite of aggressively giving, your machine gets going. So bunching or front loading is, if you can do it, is a really good thing to create that flywheel you're talking about.
And as we mentioned earlier, there actually is a second reason now with the big tax bill from last year, from 2025, to do bunching as well. So one reason to do bunching is if you are below the level where you can itemize, and you have the wherewithal, bunching is actually a way that you can get above that level, take that itemized deduction, and then fund your giving for a number of years. But that big tax bill last year added this 0.5% that you can't deduct. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but I did write this up and actually produced some charts and et cetera. But it turns out the average American, it's amazing, giving is so big in the US. It was almost $600 billion last year. It's like 2% of GDP. Like, the US is one of the most generous countries in the world because of all those individuals giving. But the average American also gives about 2% a year. And so it turns out 0.5% doesn't sound big until you realize that if you're like the average person and give about 2% of your income to charity, wait, 0.5% is a quarter of 2%. Right? So that 0.5% actually isn't as small a number as you think. You could lose a quarter of that charitable deduction every year. And so bunching says, hey, if you put aside multiple years of giving, the example I give in my article is like, if you front load 5 years worth of giving, then 0.5% is a much smaller portion of 10%, right? So you still get to deduct that 9.5%. But if you just give 2% every year, you end up giving up a quarter of your deduction every year. And so when you look at the math over 5 years, like I said, not everyone has the wherewithal to do it, but if you've had a good year, or you've had a stock perform, or you feel like now's the right time to fund your giving, even if it's from your index funds, et cetera, putting that money aside in 1 year into a donor advised fund is really good for taxes for multiple reasons. And then, of course, because the money compounds, it's still invested. It can be in that custom portfolio or one of our standard portfolios. That compounding means that you'll have more money than you think to give. It's actually one of the reasons that members at Daffy give more over time, is actually the money is not just sitting in a bank account. It's actually invested. And so it does grow over time.
What it's great to teach too, which I realized is one of the things we don't learn about. We get addicted to saving, we get addicted to scarcity, and we want to switch on that spending and abundance lever when you hit enough. And this helps you do that because it's actually a way to learn about drawdown. It's actually a way to learn about the 4% rule. Okay, I can have a safe giving rate where I'll never run out of giving money. So functionally, it's like a retirement portfolio for giving, if you want to keep it as an endowment and a perpetual giving machine. So for me, it's a great tool to teach drawdown, honestly.
That's really interesting. I think that we could probably this from other members, and especially like when you have big years in the market, like the last couple of years have been very good in the market. A lot of our members will reflect that they have more money than they expected to give. We could use that, I think. I think there's something there about teaching people this basic idea of having a portfolio that grows over time and what's safe to take out on a regular basis. Everyone has to get a crash course in this almost when they start thinking about retirement. And for folks who think about financial independence early, all of a sudden they have to learn this math, right? Like, what can I safely use from this portfolio on an ongoing basis? But I think you're exactly right. This is the amazing thing I think about giving and donor advised funds. It's all the same math. It's all the same money logic, all the same personal finance wisdom for these other financial goals like retirement or saving for education or just for independence, just applied to giving. But it turns out it's the same personal finance lessons.
Yes, it's across all accounts with different tax treatments and structures. But for example, the same thing's true of generational educational wealth with the 529. Front load it early, let it grow. And by the time you need it, it's a snowball rolling downhill without any effort. You're going to be able to spin off the money to pay for your kids, your grandkids' educations, and fund their retirement and their Roth too. All these vehicles have unique features from a tax optimization and wealth generation across generation standpoint that we really need to get the message about accounts like a donor advised fund out there to young people early in their financial lives, corporations that want to encourage giving as people take on their first job. Heck, it will improve retention for people with companies. Like my company lets me give to who I want to and supports that. Why wouldn't I want to work for them?
Yeah, no, I think you're seeing, like I said, Daffy for Work. One of the reasons it's so popular with technology companies is because technology companies are always worried about talent and perks. And it turns out that actually this is something that people care about. People care about financial benefits. They care about retirement. They care about giving. And so it does turn out to be very valuable that way. But obviously, you don't have to tell me that we should be teaching people more about personal finance. The whole reason I teach the class I teach at Stanford, it's been going on for 9 years now, is because I was always convinced that this was the class that wasn't offered. You can go to the best schools, you can be incredibly smart, but if you've never actually spent time studying or learning about personal finance, you have these anecdotes. When I worked at LinkedIn, I would call this friends of your parents and parents of your friends. It's not always the best way to learn everything about how life works. It's actually very narrow, and not everyone has the benefit of having people in their network who know these things. Worse, some of them teach you the wrong things. And this is one of the reasons I do the class, but I agree with you. The reason I love this space is because all these different lessons, you can tell them to people, right? You can write books about them, articles, you can do podcasts, etc. But I really feel that some of this has to be built into the products themselves, right? Like they have to make it easy to do the right thing. And so when we design Daffy, we're always thinking about the features that what can we borrow from the financial world and then apply that to our mission, which is to help people be more generous.
Yeah, Adam, so you are a financial educator. You teach at Stanford. You're a disruptor that has been at many other startups, done startups yourself. You sit on boards of these technology companies. We're incredibly grateful that you sat down with us today and really taught us so much and that you're democratizing an area that forever has been clunky, expensive, and just not inviting to everyday people. So this was amazing for us. Our audience is going to appreciate it. We are not just giving them the basics, but we're taking them on up to some things. As their wealth grows, then so will their giving, and in a very easy way. Bill, you talked about so many things. You had so many stories about your experience with Daffy. I'm a new user, so I only had a little bit to share, but it's incredibly valuable to hear firsthand experience of users that knew nothing about Daffy before they signed up, and he figured all of this stuff out, and he is using it like crazy. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up, but Bill, I'm going to let you finish up for us, and then we'll let Adam have the last word.
Yeah, what we're here about is really financial wellness and giving while living and in death, but while living, you get to feel the impact of it. You get to see the impact of it. You get to transfer that knowledge and that giving habit down generations. And Daffy allows us to do that. And it is a critical piece on the front end of our financial lives and on the back end and throughout. Late starters that may not have too much money to rub together because they're trying to get their oxygen mask on and get to financial independence, they can still do it in a small way. You can give of your time, first of all, but you can give of small amounts of money in a very efficient way that creates viral kind of growth and impact. And Daffy is there for all of us. I am an avid fan. I'm an ambassador, as is Jackie now. Adam, thank you for being with us here today and educating us more on this growing and evolving technology for the masses. We are all tithers. We are all givers at heart. And you're taking away the friction and making it easy to give.
Yeah, I really appreciate the kind words. And you're speaking to why we created Daffy in the first place. There's always the heart and the mind. Some people come to donor advised funds from the mind. It's incredibly tax efficient. There's no question. There's so many ways that using a donor advised fund, whether you're running a business or for it's your own life or legacy planning, there are a lot of people who come into the donor advised fund for very rational money related reasons. But the heart matters too, right? For most of us, we give. Right? We give to a church or a synagogue, a religious institution. We give to our kids' schools. We might give to our alma mater. We give to organizations we care about. I think if most of us look at our budgets, there are line items there where we have given. And it's so much better to have set aside money into an account just for giving. All the information is there. All the receipts are there. Everything you want is there. And most people just don't realize that account already exists and has existed for decades. It's called a donor advised fund. And so the whole idea behind Daffy was just to make it easy for people to get started. And so if I can impart anything to the audience, I would just say that if you are the type of person who gives to charity, take a few seconds. It takes less than a minute. Open up a small donor advised fund, fund it with a few dollars, set a goal for your giving for the year. I think you'll find that very quickly you'll realize that not only is it so much easier and it's more rewarding, and it'll become something that you want to share with friends and colleagues and family members, because giving is one of the few financial tasks that actually we like to do with others. And that's why these organizations build and grow. So love it. I appreciate you having me on, and I love that you're talking about this topic. And I especially love tying it in to good hygiene around financial wellness. I think that's so important. It's where my heart lies as well.
We can see that. And thank you so much for spending time with us today. Jackie, we will see our audience next week on Catching Up to Fi.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. And our editor is Fritz Brizard. We love them, and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community, and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptofi.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services, because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to Fi. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to Fi. Cheers.